How's everybody doing? This is Captain Brian Brown. We are out here on Lake Okeechobee doing some heavy cover crappie fishing. And as you can see, we're up in all these thick reeds, cattails, floating stuff. Got some dollar wart mats in here, some hyacinth mats in here. And we are trying to catch some of these little slabs out of some of this heavy cover. That one there ain't quite a slab, but it goes to show what we got out here and what we got going. We're just taking, definitely not a slab. Nice fish. Next year he'll be a keeper. We're just taking these little jigs and just dropping them down in some of this grass. Every now and again you got to straighten this hook back down a little bit. And we've got some 10-pound braid and 12-foot B&M poles. And we're just sticking it down here in any little hole we can get the jig down in. Let it all slow down and give it a couple shakes and then bring it back up. A lot of these fish, if you can get under these mats, the fish will eat it as soon as it gets through the mat, because they're already there looking up, feeding on whatever's bugs or crustaceans are crawling on that mat, even the little minnows that are swimming up against the mat. There's some fish. That's a little bear is a keeper, you know. When we get into some of the reeds and this other stuff, you tend to got to leave it down in the bottom a little bit farther. And that's why we're fishing about 4 foot of water, so I got about 3.5, maybe 4 foot of line. We might be in about 4.5 foot of water. And what I'll do is, a lot of times just take the pole, stick it down. It's hard bottom in here. Stick the pole down, find out where on my pole I've actually got the depth at. And here it's right on the break mark, so I just try to get my jig so it's about 6 inches above my break right here. That way when I've got it all the way, the tip of the rod on the water, I know I'm 6 inches off the bottom. Now a lot of these fish aren't, you don't even have to wait for it to get all the way to the bottom. They're hitting it on the way down. Especially when you get in these mats, like I say, in these mats a lot of times they're just right below it. As soon as the jig breaks free and gets right below the mat is when they come up and get it. Every now and again you can get it all the way down, and then as you're bringing it back up, right before you get to the bottom of the mat, just giving it a little shake. A lot of times we'll get that fish to react to it and make it look like a bug or something feeding on the bottom of that mat. They'll come up and snatch it on you. Green color doesn't really seem to matter a whole lot. I mean, you'll find some days, that it does. But for the most part, your blues, your chartreuses, your whites, you can't go wrong. What we've got right here is, I've got a big island of flat reeds, cattails, kind of all mixed together right here. And what we've also got going in the middle of this, my jig on one from the end of my rod, is we've got some mats in here, some stuff that's matted up with dollar wart and whatnot is matted in the middle of this. And what will happen is these fish like to get just underneath these mats. And a lot of times along the bank over here, there's a bunch of it along the bank here, but it seems like these fish are preferring to be out here in this open water, but the heavier cover you can find in this open water, seems like the better off you can be. This is about, I don't know how many fish now I've caught out of this mat. off already. There's a little bit of stuff over here I'm going to give a quick try to. And then I've got another big mat right back here behind me. We're going to move over to here in a minute. A lot of times these fish, I'll hit it real hard on the way down. And there's other times they just come up from underneath it and get it. So you really got to watch. Having that yellow line is crucial. And then watching that line as you drop it, or dropping that jig down there, that line will go slack a lot of times. There's no reason for that jig to go slack unless you've got the bite where that fish has come up from underneath it and grabbed it. Here than we'd like it to be. Makes a kind of hard swinging this jig around, getting it into the right spots. A lot of times you go to put it in something and one of these reeds will sway and wind up kind of messing up your drop here. It's one reason I like these poles with the eyes on them that a lot of guys will use for spider rigging, is that way you're usually trying to reach out and just drop it in a hole, but a lot of times that way I can grab this line with my hand and pull that jig right to the tip. I can get in here, somewhere where I might not normally be able to just drop it down into, stick it back in there, and then just let it drop down into the bottom. That works a lot of the time, especially on these windier days, where when these cattails or reeds are swaying back and forth, you can't quite get it down in there right. You can pull that jig right to the tip of the rod, and then you can take it out too without it getting all tangled up. That's a lot of times when people get tangled up, is when they've got it down in there and then they go to pull it back up and that jig hits something and wraps around it. There's a lot of times when guys will get, when they wind up actually getting more tangled than any time during the drop. I've got another big, well, as you can see here, we've switched areas and we're still fishing some heavy cover for crappies, but what we've got here is more of a lot more mat style. We've kind of lost the cattails and the reeds and everything else. And what this is just big mats that have blown in here. Almost the exact same thing you'd bass fish. Kind of what we caught those fish out of before, but just in a bigger realm. Basically, this is, I mean, we're heavy duty crappie fishing. Basically, punching mats for crappies is what this is. Just not nearly as heavy of a jig and heavy a line. Dark. This is spawning male crappie, black as he can be. They're getting their spawning mode. That's what they're going to look like. That one was a thumper. That thing dropped down in there and it got to where it was supposed to be, and it was all over it. No guessing about a bite there. Try to be as quiet around these fish as you can, but it's kind of funny. I mean, the trolling motor noise doesn't seem to bother them like a lot of people think they would. Some of this stuff, like here, that was kind of a bonus fish. A lot of these mats I like. We're not around as thick a cover with the cattails and reeds, but I still tend to like to have some vertical cover to go along with the horizontal cover. I think those fish, if you can get both pieces of cover together, it just makes such a better area, because it just gives them that little extra security of being able to get up next to something underneath that mat, and yet their backs can be up against that mat and have the overhead cover along with the vertical cover. It doesn't hurt either. You're trying to get it up underneath some of this stuff, but we've got some cloud cover that's moved in, and these fish will pull out from inside those mats to this outside edge, so it doesn't hurt every now and again to just drop one out along the outside edge. See if you've got any fish that are moved out there already. The one thing I didn't bring with me today is use a little rake to do this. You can get in there and just create yourself some holes, because some of this stuff's so thick you just can't get down in there. And you get yourself a rake on aluminum. It doesn't have to be very big, just a little 2-prong, even a 1-prong rake, just something to create a big enough hole to get that jig in, because it seems like if you can get the jig in it, even if you get a bite, that fish will work its way up out of there, even though it's that tight and viney, and a lot of times you can't get the jig to get in an area. You can shake that jig just enough or make enough of a hole to get that jig in it. It just seems like when you set the hook and pull a fish up, you tend to get them to come up through it. So, and I don't know if you can see on the video how thick this stuff is, but I mean, the birds are walking across it, so it's not real open. We're just trying to hit the open holes that are in it. What'll happen a lot of times, this stuff will get so thick, they'll come in here and spray it. And the last time I was here, that's what they were doing, so I wasn't too sure. There's a good fish. If they'd still be in here or not, but as you can tell, now that's a stud. Look where he got it. He got this thing. There was no doubt he wanted it. Take a look at where that jig is. And that jig is down in his mouth. I mean, when he hit it, there was no doubt he had it. And you can't even tell. I mean, there's not even really an opening there. I just shook it down and got it to get inside there. Like I said, if you can get that jig down through there, that fish will work its way out. There's one in the same hole. Little fella. Same thing though. I mean, that big one and this little one. Look at this little one too. Same thing. Look where he's got it. I mean, they're eating that deal. That's when you know you got the right bait, right color. Get him all done. Get my hands washed out. And we've only went about, what, 30 feet on this section so far. And that fish came out of the exact same hole. See if we can get another one out of there. I'm not a big color freak. I just start with the normal everyday basic colors, your whites, your chartreuses, blues, and just kind of let the fish tell me from there what they want. And obviously, almost every fish I've caught so far today has had this kind of lime green and white jig back there between their eyes. So it pretty much tells me you're throwing the right color when they're eating it that good. Now if you're dropping it in there and they're just pecking at it, getting it quick and not getting it, or you're missing, you're lifting those fish out and they're falling off, or they just maybe got it in the corner of the mouth or something, then you're putting it in the right areas, but maybe it's the color that you want to change up, and that's it's pretty easy to do with these jigs. Just have yourself a handful of colors, and and if they're not biting one basic color, go to another basic color. Don't get all crazy right off the bat and think, oh, because they're not biting white that you shouldn't put chartreuse or blue on, and so you go to some oddball pink and yellow or something different. Just try another basic color. You don't have to get too wild with them right off the bat. Most of these fish, when they've got it underneath these mats, they've got it right away. I mean, even if they don't get it right away, you still want to drop it in there, shake it, do your thing with it. It doesn't mean just because you drop it in there and it it made it below the mat and you didn't get a bite, doesn't mean to just pick it up and hit the next spot, because some of these fish will. They might be off to the side a little bit and it takes them a second to come over and get it, or they might not be as high as the other ones, and they'll still come up and get it. You just got to give them a second, or shake it, give it a little more action than it just falling through the mat. This is the 16-ounce jig I'm using now. Sometimes a little heavier jig can help. It'll drop through the mat a little easier. You just got to slow it down then once you get it through. They're not like a bass where they want it shooting through the mat. Once you get it through, you just want to drop it down slow, and like that, you can and will break this braided line. So we're going to go to a different color now that we broke our line, and we'll see if it makes a difference. Color is the deal, or if it's the placement and where these fish are at. Mats will change day to day and definitely by the week, but a lot of times by the day. Like this here is blowing in here. This wasn't here. There we go. Another little fish, but you can see how that one, he didn't have it as well. So this may not be the color. He still bit it, but he's got it down here right in the bottom of his lip. So he didn't get it quite as well as the other ones where they've had it in the back of their eyes. So we'll give it a couple more drops. What I was saying about these mats is these mats will shift on you. So one day you might come in here and think you got a big mat that you can fish. The wind will change directions and blow this mat completely out of here. And other days you may come in here where it's a nice edge along here, and all of a sudden you got, a point of a mat sticking out. bites I've missed. See, they've hit this, but they're not getting a hold of it like they did the other one. And they could be bluegill. The bluegill are starting to come in and spawn, but that's two now that have hit this and not gotten a hold of it. You gotta watch. You notice me jerk on these to get them out with that braided line, and what'll happen, you gotta watch some of these smaller hooks on these jigs. They will open up more. The more they open up, the more you're gonna get hung up. So just check them every now and again after you've had to snap them out of some of this cover to make sure that hook doesn't open up too much, because two things will happen. One, obviously you're gonna get hung up more often. Two, you're gonna set up on a fish, and the fish is gonna come off because that hook was too open and you didn't get a good hook set into it. Smaller fish over here catching on this blue. There's another fish that come out of it. I think that fish is a 9-inch fish. I don't think he's going to measure. He's had it a little bit better though, that's for sure. Oh yeah, he makes 10. I think we're going to keep that one. We'll let that one go back and grow up a little bit. Yeah, Matt's so thick he didn't even get it all the way down. Push him back down. There he goes. Well, we've caught a few fish today. I hope what we've been able to show you on fishing these mats and the jigs and the line rod, kind of what to look for, these holes in here, or to create your own holes and stuff. But hopefully this stuff will give you a different way to come out here and catch crappies. I know a lot of guys like to fish the open water and do the bobber stuff, but I really enjoy doing this. I think you can add a few more fish to your bag. Maybe you're a couple, 3 fish short being out in the open water. That sun comes up, these fish move underneath here. Hopefully this will help you catch a few more fish. So until next time, this is Captain Brian Brown, Fishing Hike Guide Service, fishinghike.com, and look forward to seeing you on the water next time.